Do it. Hello. Welcome back. Another episode. Is my microphone on? I hope I turned it on. Um, Eat
Do
meat,
it
question
again.
everything. We're always so organized over here. So we got a lot of we have a lot to talk about today. I have Britt back on the show. Is this your third or second?
It might be my third. I feel like
I
I need to dip back into the archives and make sure, but could be.
I think it is too, honestly. And I feel like we already had this entire conversation in text message, and it's like, okay, we need to bring this out. The world needs to know.
The
Like,
world needs to know.
we should actually never communicate in text message. We should just always record our conversation.
Only via podcast YouTube. It'd be literally my nightmare.
There, there's a lot of good stuff. There's gold in our text messages. So I wanted to
Hmm.
have Britt back on to just talk about, God, I feel like I'm always yelling. I get so excited and I get so loud.
You're
Um,
passionate.
talk about PSMF and changing macros, switching things up, all the things, because you have your own experience with. I always like, I need to have PSMF written out because I get a little like dyslexic. I think I want to
It's
say
tough to
PMS, maybe
remember.
because we're used to saying PMS.
PMS.
So I want
And
to
it,
like switch them around.
yeah, it can cause that in the beginning. I can tell you that.
So yeah, let's just jump right in. I mean, for those that don't know what PSMF is, it's protein sparing modified fasting. So instead of water fasting, you're keeping your protein up. And it's
Hmm.
supposed to be like a 1 to 3 day event sprinkled in here with your normal macros, but you have a different experience with this, right?
A little bit. A little bit. Do you want me to go into that
Let's just dive
first?
right in. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, so this was back when I was 18, 18, 19, way pre-keto, right? So it's like I didn't know what keto was, ketogenic, any of that, like any of the buzzwords. And just to preface, I'm in my 30s, so that was a long time ago. And so I saw a nutritionist at the Cleveland Clinic, which is where my endocrinologist was, referred by my endocrinologist. I had been diagnosed with um what have I been diagnosed with? A PCOS.
I was gonna say, I'm not sure if I should say it. So
So many things, but that was the no, I'm kidding, but that was the diagnosis when I was like 15. So I had gained and this was the gold from our text messages, like the freshman 50, not 15, the freshman 50. I do blame the University of Kentucky. And yeah, that's where I was summer after freshman year, and gained a ton of weight and super miserable. Felt really unhappy, but also just really unhealthy. And so, long story short, went to my endocrinologist. She referred me to a nutritionist. Their question was, "Are you an all or nothing person?" And I was like, hold my beer. Quite literally. I'm like, absolutely. I'm president and CEO of All or Nothing Club. And they were like, perfect. So we have a program that we would like to see if you're interested in doing. And sure enough, I have it right here. It's like when you watch something from like the 90s, like a news clip, and it looks so old. But
it
protein
does look
sparing
old.
modified fats. Isn't that crazy? The Cleveland Clinic Foundation.
Like,
Here
when
it
did
is.
they even print that? That looks like it's from the
I
80s.
know. Can I see? This says Cleveland Clinic Foundation 2005, but it was around that. So, anyways, this was what I did, and I started 1 month before I went back to school, at home, and my mom cooked for me. I was like a personal chef. Shout out to Karen,
Keto
and
Karen.
and I literally, so it was just a combination of things. It was a really restrictive diet. I tested my ketones, which was actually with like urinary strips. Like I didn't even know like what I was doing. And that was, I'm sure, pre keto mojo and all of it, honestly, like before people were even knowing what that was. And I still didn't connect I was doing a keto diet. Like I didn't fully understand it. I thought that this was like its own thing. But basically, I was eating really lean protein. I had dabbled with low carb from like an Atkins perspective in high school, and that had helped me a little bit, but it wasn't like structured. So it's like cutting the carbs was already petrifying, and then cutting out fat. So essentially, just to explain this, it's a high protein, lower fat, which scares everyone to death, very low carb, diet, and it is a diet. This is not a lifestyle. I think we want to be very clear that we're talking about tools during this episode, right, Courtney?
Yes.
Maybe we'll get a little GLP-1 or something in there.
And this is
Um,
not medical advice. We're just sharing our
yes,
thoughts.
I'm not a doctor. I am my own doctor, but I am not a doctor. And so, anyways, I lost 22 pounds the first month before I went back to school. That was with no exercise because I honestly had no energy to exercise the first several weeks. And I actually felt incredible when I went back to school. My mom, again, Karen's the best. You haven't met Karen yet, Courtney, but you need to.
I mean,
Um,
we've been on the same Zoom call, so I
yeah,
feel honored to have done that.
y'all have. So she brought me back to school in my apartment with my three other roommates and took me to Fresh Market. I don't know if you have one of those, and loaded up on all the meats and the protein. So I've been eating a meat-based diet for a very long time and loaded my fridge and freezer full. And I did that for that whole semester. By the time I went home for Christmas break, I was down at 72 pounds and felt like a completely different person. Now, let me just say, I was monitored by doctors. I had to take specific supplementation that is not all over the counter, such as potassium and other things. And I had to get blood work done monthly to do this. So this is not something you should do long term. And I think we're going to talk more about that. But this is definitely something that worked for me then. And now that I know a little bit more about it, there's a lot of fake news in here, which is really wild, even from the Cleveland Clinic. And this should not shock anyone, especially on your channel. I would say that, there's a lot of misinformation, to be real, but it's a tool that worked for me. And it's something that I have in my toolbox and I pull out and have my entire 90-pound weight loss.
Okay, I have questions. So, from what I understand, like we said, this is something to be used like 1 to 3 times a week, if that. And like the calculator that I did has me at like 700 and something calories, 30
Mhm.
grams of fat, like 10 carbs or something. It's very extreme. Were your macros that extreme the whole time? Like, did you even track macros? Like, where were you at?
So I did track them, and you're gonna laugh. I had like a spreadsheet, and it was like printed off. Like, no, this was like pre-apps and stuff, right? So it's like I literally had like a spreadsheet. I had like an old school food scale, and so I was tracking more by the ounces. Um, like when it came to like actual protein, I was eating super lean meats. Now, when I went back to school, my fat did go up a little bit. Like I was having a little bit more fat. I was having more eggs with the yolk, and I was having a little bit of dairy, like cottage cheese, mainly because of the protein content. It would be low fat cottage cheese and so forth. However, did I eat that majority of the time? I did, but probably not that low. Probably not that low. People are going to hear this and be like, "This is insane," and like it kind of is. But knowing what I know now, the deal is this is a fasting mimicking diet. So that's what people need to understand. It's supposed to mimic a fast. Now, it's not fully fasting in terms of autophagy and all the benefits that you can get from like a literal fast. However, there is such there is research and science showing that even with a protein sparing modified fast like this, it's mimicking fasting at a cellular level and even a genetic level, actually, which is really interesting. So because you're in such a caloric deficit, but that you're eating a high protein and reserving that muscle, that so there's two things happening here. Number one, ketones, obviously. Now, don't panic when you do this and you don't produce crazy ketones because that can be common for a lot of people. I don't know because I was doing like urinary ketones at that point. But to be honest, like my whole ketogenic and carnivore journey, it takes a lot of work for me to get very high ketones, and I can only do it through fasting, not from eating more fat, not from eating less protein or more protein or less carbs. I mean, I've gone down to like less than 10, zero carbs. It's very difficult. That is bio-individual that people need to understand. People beat themselves up for not being able to get their ketones over 1.0 or 1.5, and that depends on the person. Yes, there's things you can do to do it, but for me, it revolves around fasting always. So I just want to say that. But the other thing that happens, so you do produce ketones for most people. It depends on, how large or small or so forth, or how high you can get your ketones, I guess. But the other thing that's happening is gluconeogenesis, right? So you eating high protein that's lean, so still lower in fat, super low carb, it's low calorie, but it's high protein. I think researching it now and what I started following when I would incorporate protein sparing modified fast in throughout my weight loss journey later in life, I would keep protein around zero point 0.7 to 1 gram per ideal body weight. 1 gram's a lot for me, to be honest. And so I don't always hit that, nor do I really care to. But zero point 0.7 is a good like minimum, I think, when you're doing this. So that's just like a little formula. But there's a lot of calculators out there and so forth, like you used. So I just say this because the gluconeogenesis is really fascinating because we know that that converts protein to glucose, right, for energy. But the thermic effect of that, it takes a lot of energy for your body. It's a process, right, in your body. So it's essentially like a secondary furnace. So this is why people talk about why this is so beneficial and a quicker approach. Quick is not always the theme and the goal, but I'm just saying, if I have some stubborn pounds to lose, or I came off of a little wild vacation or weekend, yeah, this is a tool. And I get back to feeling good really quick. And there might be a little bit of white knuckling involved in the beginning, but I prefer to do something like this over actual fasting. Some people love to fast, and that is hard for me mentally. Could I be stronger and probably spend more time in the word and figure it out for myself? Probably. But I do better with this. I also prefer this over fat fasting, which I know is super common. And I think that there's a lot of benefit of that. I could see that when it comes to ketone production. That's why people struggle getting high ketones sometimes, depending on the person, with protein sparing modified fast because of the low fat content, which makes sense. But I was still in a state of ketosis. And now knowing, after researching it further, being in ketosis and having that effect of burning your own body fat for fuel on top of gluconeogenesis, you're kind of burning extra calories, having two furnaces burning at once, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually was just, I don't know who I was talking to, maybe even Serena, that people say when we're doing these fat fasts, because that's kind of what led me to talking about this, is I was just doing an egg fast and I was doing the egg fast super high fat. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sarcastically a large amount of fat.
I remember
And
your
she
macros.
mentioned, yeah, she heard of people saying, well, that might not actually, my high ketones might only be because of the butter. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
actually my ketones, but it's the fat that I'm eating. Like it's almost like testing that. I don't know if that's
I don't know, like, I can't speak to that from like a scientific, but if you think about it, though you're producing really high ketones and that's present in your blood, which is great, you still have to work through the dietary fat you're consuming before you're tapping into actual fat stores. So I can see the benefit. That's my understanding of that, which makes sense. And I've tried it. So it's like high, and I've also gained weight in ketosis. I think that's like a phenomenon to some people that they're like ketosis equals weight loss. No, it does not. Like, so I could overeat fat for me personally. That's just what works for my body. If I'm eating a ton of fat, I can be in a state of ketosis and gain weight easily. I've done it for years.
yeah, and I can too. I think just I mean, I just go back to that egg fast and it was just a lot of fat and I lost weight on it, but then it just
Yeah.
had me thinking like, is this too much? Like, should I be doing this? And that's what led me down the PSMF rabbit hole because it's like, okay, I've done standard carnivore, 70-30 split macros. I've done higher carnivore, which is 80-20.
Yeah.
I've never dabbled in PSMF or even I guess I've had like a few weeks here and there where I lowered to like 60-40, and those are
Mm-hmm.
actually Maria's macros too. I went and did
Mhm.
her calculator and I plugged in like a day of those macros. I'm like, oh,
She
that's
has a
60
great
40.
calculator. I love
Yeah.
Maria's calculator. I used
I,
to refer clients to use hers for because she does it for carnivore, keto, protein sparing, modified fast, like all of it.
yeah. So her regular calorie like calculator, like obviously it's like you can set it to be like more of a quicker weight loss. And the
Hmm.
calories seemed a little low to me. But then it's also like, well, maybe that's why I'm not losing weight. Like maybe I am eating too much. And then you have other people saying, calorie deficits, like don't do that, just eat in the carnivore space, like don't even worry about the calorie deficit, that's going to lead to, you gaining it back. But it's like, I don't know, maybe it is, maybe I've just been, maybe the 1800 calories I've been eating has just been a little too much. Maybe I do need 1300 calories. I don't know.
I don't know if you need 1,300 calories. I think that's low. And I think a lot of people would agree with that.
And
But
that's what I thought too. Yeah.
here's the thing. And you know what I think is really interesting? And actually, Maria Emmerich is the first one that exposed this to me because I was like so into macro tracking. And here's the thing. Okay, two things. Sorry, I'm all over the place. But I think it's really important to say that calories do matter for most people. That is a very touchy subject in the carnivore community. I was an AMA coach for a long time, hundreds of women. I had maybe two that did not have to worry about calories, and they were severely overweight. So, to get them down 100 pounds, that was probably not a huge deal. The last 50, yep, it mattered. So I've lost 90 pounds. You've lost over 50 pounds, 60 pounds.
56.
Okay, we see you. We're here. We see you. We're present. So yeah, they do matter. Now, is insulin probably more important? Yeah. Like I think everyone in the ketogenic carnivore community would agree with that. But I think that that's really important to acknowledge. And that majority of the messages that I get, and I'm sure what you get, is a lot of people that are like, what? I'm not losing weight on carnivore. Why? I eat lion, I eat so clean, I do this and that, I'm intermittent fasting. And it's like, you got to figure out those ratios. Some people do really well with high fat carnivore, really well. And other people do really well with high protein carnivore. Some people do really well with a balance of both. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for especially, I would say the last 20 ish pounds, for most, not for all, calories matter. So I think that's really important. The other thing I was going to say back to Maria Emmerich and what she kind of exposed me to is on top of your cookbook back here, which I have two copies, Courtney, and just for the record, I also have all of Maria's cookbooks. And those were some of the first things that I bought when I was ketogenic. And she'll have like daily tracking in there, like examples of like a day of eating. And if you go through there, every day the caloric intake is different. And I am like such like a good student when it comes to this. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. I was like drilling down because I'm like, you tell me what to do and I'll do it. I mean, the Cleveland Clinic knew. Like I was like the poster child for this diet when I did this. Like I was like, yes, I will listen to you. And I wanted to nail my macros perfectly and I wanted to do it. But when I was following and just looking at her references of her meals, the calories were different throughout the whole week. Now, sparingly, like it was like within like a couple hundred calories maybe, but that's a big difference if you think about like tracking your macros to perfection every single day. I think there's something to be said about that. And when I paid attention to that, I started playing with that myself. Where someday, and I'm also active, I believe in strength training. I believe in walking and getting your steps in. I lost the most weight. It was the most consistent with my own weight loss when I was strength training, honestly, twice a week. I'd rather do it more, but that's all I was doing and walking every single day. No intense cardio, nothing crazy. And I was very diligent about my nutrition. But I could have 1,800 calories of clean animal based nutrition, high fat, high protein, the whole thing, drop them down to 1,500, but go back up to 1,600, maybe 1,450 one day because I fasted longer, back up to 1,850. You see what I mean?
And that makes sense because most people, I mean, a lot of people aren't tracking. And
Mm-hmm.
just no matter what diet you're eating, I think it's normal to have hunger fluctuate anyways.
Yes.
And this kind of like brings me to I don't know if there's even one right way for each person. I think we almost might
There's
need to
not.
like change it up because
Yes.
I did equal parts fat and protein for 55 pounds, and that
Yeah,
served me well.
it works
I've
for you.
dabbled in high fat and lost some weight.
Hmm.
So I think there's not even like a one thing. I think we need to like mix it up. And right now, I feel like I hope that lowering my fat just a little bit is going to be helpful. And that
Yeah.
brings me to like I always want to say Laura Spath. Um, she shared in a live video like last week or whatever, that recently made some changes and she's lost 20 pounds. So
Yeah.
she is going to make more videos on this, which I'm excited to hear. But for those that didn't watch, a little recap was essentially, now correct me if I'm wrong, this was my takeaway from it. They were in Spain, so her like cheese consumption maybe got a little out of control. She was typically eating a lot of the leaner cuts on carnivore, not having ribeyes. And she would like typically, I almost said always wait till lunch, but typically push her first meal off till lunch. Sometimes wouldn't be hungry for dinner. So a lot of unintentional OMAD. And I believe she even said maybe some under eating.
Hmm.
And now Chris, her husband, is like taking over her meals, which sounds like amazing. What a dream. Like, here
I
you
love
go.
it.
Here's what
Please
you need to eat for success. So he
put it in
has
front of
her
me.
eating breakfast,
Hmm.
eating lunch, upping the animal fats. So having ribeye, having pork belly, reeling in the dairy, still having some dairy, but keeping it minimal. And it made me think like, that's great. This is what's working for her now. But what she was doing was working for a while for her
Hmm.
until it wasn't. So that's not to say that everyone should be higher fat. I just think the leaner worked for her for a while until it didn't. So right
Yeah.
now, this is going to be what's right for her. And what's right for her might not be what's right for somebody else. Maybe they did high fat for a while and then started stalling. So now it's time to switch it up. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting and to observe like what she has going on too.
I love it. And what I took away from that was the same thing, Courtney. And also what I thought was interesting is like, she kind of talked a lot about like the decision fatigue and like the convenience. Like, I think she was saying like, she just preferred to have like chicken breast with a ton of cheese or like deli meat and like stuff like that, that just seemed like easier, or taco bowls with the cheese and sour cream on it. I think, and what I know for me personally, and this is the problem with just worrying about macros, is I think not all fats created the same. So for me, I could buy grass fed butter, A2 probiotic sour cream. Like, I'm talking like quality, but that fat, even tracking it, is very different than a super fatty ribeye with the way that my body metabolizes that and uses it. And so that is just true for me. Again, not for everyone, and maybe not for Laura for a long time, obviously. She's clearly lost a ton of weight, been crazy successful with her journey. But she said she'd struggle with these last 20 pounds, or maybe they had come back on and then like it took like years, like it had been years, and she was just frustrated. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting going from, because she was saying she doesn't like meat on the bones, like she was doing like plain chicken thighs, but not with the I don't know, the skin and like so forth. And so yeah, just switching to less dairy. Like you said, she was having like a little bit, but like 2 tablespoons of cheese. Like, like which is like nothing.
Yeah, using it
So
as a condiment, which I think is
mhm,
great. And yeah, like if you're going to have it, have small amounts if you're going to have it every day. Or what I typically do on a daily basis is not have any, but then I'll have like a big fun recipe once a week that might,
totally.
have dairy that way. So yeah, I don't think we need to be like gorging ourselves on dairy, of
Yeah.
course.
And what if you saved it? This is like also the mindset that helps me when I have like a long-term goal, meaning like I'm trying to shut off again, some poundage. And so that takes a while. So back in the day when I had 90 pounds to lose, I was like, I bet 6 months. Like that was like my mindset, right? Now, when I have 20 pounds to lose, I'm like, I bet 6 to 8 months. I mean, like I give myself realistic timeframes. I hope to do it sooner than that, but to lasting weight loss can take time, and especially going back to the whole thing about gaining it back with protein modified fast. If you're eating around 1,000 calories a couple days or staying at that, and then you go to a normal day of eating, yes, you will gain it back. And so here's the crazy thing. Any diet you do, any type of like, if you do ketogenic and you go to a clean eating diet, eating carbohydrates, you will gain weight. I promise you. Now, if you do it healthfully, it will be water weight. But I've coached people doing high carb, low fat, high protein, and also ketogenic. And I know both macros. And I went through a whole period where I was coaching both of them. The ones doing with carbohydrates always were 5 pounds heavier. Meaning if they were to go keto, and most of them did and wanted to try that, they would drop that like that because that's water, So I just think it's important to understand, like, I heard a study, I can't quote where, but you could look it up, where it talked about people doing the protein sparing modified fast, 50% gained it back when they stopped doing it. That sounds like a lot, where people would be like, see, well, guess what? People doing any diet, 80 to 90% gain it back. So actually that's pretty good odds. And I think it kind of teaches you how to eat. I think it teaches you satiety. And also, how is GLP-1 produced in the body? Miss Courtney, who knows this so well.
Oh, well, they do say lean protein a lot,
Yeah,
which is
that's
interesting.
interesting.
Oh my gosh, I just drew on my comforter. Sorry, I got getting a little wild with my pen right now.
You're getting
Um,
excited.
yeah,
So
I
that's
thought that was
interesting.
interesting too. But then they did say like healthy fats was listed. So I don't think they
Sure.
were wanting you to go to
I don't
super.
think
I don't know, but
solely. Yeah.
yeah, very interesting. And then this also makes me think of Primal Bod. I feel like
Mhm.
I am getting so many comments that I should just do Primal Bod.
No.
And here's my thoughts on what'd you say?
I said no. I think she's great, and I'm kidding. I think if you are struggling, I could see a lot of benefit just from like the videos. I love her reels and like I watch her stuff, but I don't know. You continue.
No, it's just my thoughts are because from what I see is she's also promoting leaner cuts,
Yeah.
lots of fasting, and I'm just wondering the same thing that's going on with Laura switching is maybe people are coming from high fat or they're eating lots of ribeyes, they're adding lots of butter, and then shaking things up, switching it, and doing this is working for them. And I don't mean that in a dig to the program like, oh, it's only
No.
working. Like it's obviously working for a lot of people, but I
Yeah.
also wonder, I don't know if that's necessarily the correct answer that everyone should be eating this way. I think maybe it just comes with shaking it up. I feel like if you switch to something, like you're typically going to have a little honeymoon phase of something's going to happen. There's going to be changes to be made. But I
Yeah.
just find it interesting on that she's saying we shouldn't even be eating ribeyes, you know?
Well, in her stuff, at least from what I can pick up on, because she does share a ton, which I appreciate. Like obviously she's promoting her program, but she's so about getting back with nature, which I think is really key. It's an incredible message, and it makes a lot of sense in these modern worlds that we're living in. And I think that she talks a lot about if you go hunting and you kill in the wild, it's animals are not fatty, like and so that's valid. I mean, where do you get the fattiest ribeyes? Typically grass fed, grain finished, and like that's if you buy regenerative grass fed meat, it is not fatty. Typically, it's not much. And I do buy grass fed for different reasons. And, I'm working on toxin exposure and all that mess. And the reality is, I look for the more marbled, like of the grass fed. Like my butcher knows. Like I'm like, do you have any more in the back? Like these look really painfully lean. And so there's something to be said about that. Like a conventional grain finished ribeye versus a grass finished ribeye are very different. And so I think that is interesting. And meaning when I say grass fed, those are animals that are living how they're supposed to off of the land, and especially when it comes to regenerative practices. So you kind of can't argue that. So I think that that's interesting. She's also huge about nature in terms of the circadian rhythm health, right? So she really promotes like eating breakfast first thing in the morning, minimizing coffee. I mean, like all these things that she preaches about, I think is like really valid.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the leaner. And I've thought about that too. And I've also thought about like when Saladino is eating like ungodly amounts of liver, it's like if you picture a whole cow and you would eat that entire cow for a year, it's not that much liver like he's
No,
eating. And so yeah,
no,
I've thought about this stuff too, but then it's also like, okay, well, some people are thriving on the high fat, and especially for like deep ketosis or like therapeutic ketosis or even just like healing something, you want like a lot of fat, which is interesting. So I'm almost wondering, because I don't know the answer to this, I'd be curious to know because I know when we get steaks, there's a lot of fat that they trim off. So I'm
hmm
curious what like an actual cow even looks like fat wise before they're cutting it into steaks. Like I want to know the macro like split or whatever of a whole cow. Like are they 70/30 if you were to take and eat the whole thing at once? You know, do you get what I'm saying? Am I making sense?
no, you are. And I think honestly, it depends. It depends on the cow. It's like how we are all different, right? Like every cow's different. So it's like, they're, and especially what type of farming practices and where they're coming from too. So it's like regenerative grass-fed farming. I mean, but also, yeah, getting into it, is there like metabolic issues?
Don't body shame the cows or anything. This is a slippery slope. Um,
Some went to fat cam and some did not. And like, like I don't know. That could be interesting. I just mean in terms of like how they, carry that. But no, that's valid. But and it goes back to, and I've told you this before. I love to lie to myself sometimes. You got to know yourself. And that's why this journey is so bio individual. I think you can learn so much from other people. I think you can take bits and pieces that are working for other people and apply them to yourself and trial and error it. There's no better experiment than n equals one. You. That's it. And so none of the data and information is even interesting to me unless I try it on myself. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, and it's not to say in seasons. I think when I came at keto from such a low fat approach because I didn't know any different, this is from some of the best nutritionists in the world, arguably. You have to think about the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Hyman's from the Cleveland Clinic. And y'all, looking back at this like book now, it literally the first page talks about the three essential nutrients being carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So it's like, you have to be careful with information and what works for you and what doesn't. And also, it's really important not to shame what works for other people, too. I think that is so key and something that like the dialogue is opening up a little bit more now. I think with the Maha movement, honestly, and I've changed my tune. I'm not trying to go there with all of this, but I've changed my tune a lot when it comes to GLP-1s and peptide use and other things. I think if you are so sure about something, you need to be careful about that because I think some of the doctor I want to go to is the one that's curious, not the
question
one that has it
everything.
all figured out. Yes. Courtney says it best here on the podcast and question everything. Stay curious about it because dang, like I I don't know. I've even talked to my mom about this a little bit. Like even with I want my dad to take GLP-1, to be honest. My dad's a smoker and it's very difficult when you've been smoking most of your life. And there is a ton of research on that with addiction, far beyond just food addiction, but that's one of them. But alcoholism, serotonin level, it's very interesting. And I'm not saying a normal dose because why do you go to the doctor and they want to give you a high dose of it that's making everyone sick, that's arguably maybe causing problems such as stomach paralysis and so forth? But the reality is very low doses of that, it's really helping a lot of people. That should be very interesting. And if you don't, I don't want to do it. I have no desire for that. I think because I'm prideful, to be honest. And that's okay. I am the type of person I have to know I can do something myself. I have to. And maybe not myself, but through divine intervention. but that's just me personally. So that doesn't interest me personally right now, but I can't say forever. And I also can't say for other people that it maybe could benefit. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely question everything, stay curious and try things out. So yeah, as far as like switching up macros and stuff, like if what
Yeah,
you've been doing has you stalled, well, clearly you need to make some shifts. Like what worked for me for
absolutely.
55 pounds isn't working right now. And
Yep.
I know people, I get comments that people are exhausted on me like trying all these things, but like why wouldn't I try these things? Why would I want to accept and just be like complacent with where I am, you
It
know?
keeps
Like
it interesting. And also, like, our body, we do well off of like routine and stuff, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to mix things up, especially from a metabolic perspective. Actually, it is. And so I think that consistency is key, but I like, why not just see what makes you feel good? I know when I was eating standard macros during the week, and I would throw in one or two protein sparing modified fats, not even that strict. I think people get really in the weeds about like exact breakdown of macros. I would just eat leaner. Like when you were hating on me for the turkey chili,
I know. I thought about that the other day. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like have to eat my words on that one because here I come, chicken breast.
that's
Like,
why I used to be so in this like dogmatic carnivore world where I'm like, no one can see me buying turkey. Like the meat, the beef has all the nutrients. I would agree. Beef does have a lot of nutrients. Guess what turkey has? A lot of protein and very
yeah.
little fat.
In my
So
defense, I wasn't coming at it from a nutrient thing. It was like flavor because, of course, fat has flavor.
fair,
I'm like, who wants to
fair.
gnaw on a chicken breast? But yeah, that was before I came to this. So, I mean, there's another example like question
Totally.
things. Don't be stuck in your ways. Don't be like, turkey, you shouldn't eat
Yeah.
turkey, Britt.
Well, exactly. It's like, my goal that day, and I had a ton of eggs earlier, right? I do think you need to pay attention to like nutrient dense animal based foods. There is something to be said about that. But then it's like, come the weekend, if I have like chicken wings that are very fatty and like a ribeye, it's almost like this refeeding of the fat because I do believe in dietary fat for our hormones, for our health, you see? And then we go back a little leaner and then we go and then like you want a strategy to cut weight, to mix up flavors, to mix up your food, to listen to your body and your hunger cues and your hormones, and for women throughout the month. Dang, that's a good way to do it. And you start to
Yeah.
feel in control too.
I'm actually excited to make these changes. So, for what it's worth, on Thursday, I am starting a 3-day PSMF like experiment. And I know that's not recommended.
I can't
I
wait for the
I
comments.
know that's like here's why I'm doing it in 3 days. I want the most bang for my buck to see the results, get the information, and make a video. I don't want to make a week-long video of me doing every other day. Like that just sounds annoying. So I'm just gonna condense it into
Yeah.
3 days because I feel like what's the worst that can happen? I mean, people do 3 day, 7 day, 30-day water fast all the time. I don't think I'm
Yeah,
gonna mess up my metabolism
you're
by
not.
eating leaner for 3 days. So that's my disclaimer. And I'm gonna actually, I feel like I've been kind of lean the past few days, even after my egg fast. I think just naturally, when you have over 200 grams of fat in one day, I think your body kind of like pushes back a little bit. So I've been a little like on the leaner side, and I'm actually gonna make an effort tomorrow just to maybe have a little bit more fat than I have been doing. Like I'm gonna be at the
Smart.
zoo all day, honestly. So I'm gonna bring some carnivore bars and
Mm-hmm.
kind of refeed in a way, like you're saying, because then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I'm going to be hungry,
Yep.
but I'm excited to see what happens and just to get that information. I mean, is it sad that a 3-day PSMF is going to be like the joy in my life? Like, that's the excitement. Like, get a
Well,
life, Courtney.
and let's like get ahead of the controversy. The reality is you could be doing a 3-day dry fast. Isn't carnivore doctor, isn't Lisa doing a dry fast right now? I think I saw.
I'm not sure, but she has said that the dry fasts are even easier than when she drinks water, which is wild to me. Like, I am a thirsty person. I've always
Same.
kind of joked, like, years back, like, oh, maybe I have diabetes because I am always drinking, like, I am hitting my water goals and beyond. So I don't know how I could do a dry fast, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and I just bring that up because I have a client who did a dry fast and she felt amazing until like it was like a little tough, like mentally, I think. And but there's so much research behind that. Dr. Berg talked about that actually at Hack Your Health last year. All this to say, the reality is it's no different. It is different. But you could just be saying, I'm doing a 3-day fast. And people would be like, oh my gosh, autophagy and like cell turnover and like good for you and like cleaning out your body and like you care about your health. And then you saying, actually, I'm going to do a fast mimicking diet, but I'm going to still eat protein just to protect my muscle mass and my lean protein. You're
Dangerous.
so unhealthy, Courtney.
Dangerous. It's too low fat. Yeah.
Why are you
What
so upset?
why does PSMF get such a bad rap? And honestly, I was that too. I'm
Because
like,
it's
what?
uncomfortable. Because
But
it's
like,
uncomfortable to eat. I would rather eat a fatty ribeye than to do lean cuts. That's me personally. You know, people are like, I've even heard Dr. Ken Berry talk about like how he doesn't love like the fat on the steak. Let me tell you something. When I was a kid and my dad wouldn't eat the fat on the steak because back in the day that was like bad and gross, I would like eat it. Up to my
it's
mom.
good.
I was like, my body loves this. So like I am the fatty protein girl. But when I'm eating, not even the fatty protein as much, it's the extra for me. It's the butter, it's the dairy, it's like the excess and the calories, yes, from fat though. My body can be happy, my hormones can be happy. I can't lose weight. And I think, like you and I were talking about sometimes, and Natalie's talked about this, keto bikini bod, that sometimes health and weight loss have a little bit different paths. And that makes people very uncomfortable. But the reality is, our body's not meant to be in weight loss mode. Your body is not meant to lose weight. We are meant to hold on to weight to protect us. So, weight loss is a stressor. It's a good one if you have excess body fat and it's not making you healthy and it's creating diabetes and high blood pressure and so forth. Yes, losing weight is important. But guess what? Your body sees that as a stressor. That's why people's hair gets brittle, their nails, their skin, and everything. I had that with my weight loss. It was not my process in doing it. I didn't do protein sparing modified fast like I did in college for like my 90-pound weight loss. But all of that, I had to then prioritize nutrients. And for me, supplementation made a difference. But like those can be two different paths. And that's how I use protein sparing modified fast. I don't do that to help my leptin. And I think that
Yeah.
that's important to understand.
Two things though. Okay, so this I want to come back to like bodybuilding really quick. But
Mhm.
then so after the college then and doing all that, did you gain it all back and then some then? Because then you just said you didn't do that for these 90 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was a
So
big chunk of time in between then, right?
in college, I get then regained. I would blame a relationship. I love to blame everyone but myself. You understand this, right? Don't we all? I gained probably, I don't even have the figures, Courtney, because it's so insane. And this is how insulin resistant works too. Like I've never fully healed insulin resistance. I'm still insulin resistant. And that takes a very long time to heal, like even after like weight loss and so forth. So
That I
I,
recently, sorry not to cut you off, but I
yeah,
recently heard that because
yes,
I thought, oh, I lowered my A1C,
yeah,
then I'm good. But
no,
then I'm like, I think it was Sarah from In the Buff Wellness was like, insulin resistance can take years. And I'm like,
like a decade.
I think that's my problem,
Yes.
honestly.
Yeah. And I think, and how do you, it's almost like that's why like PCOS is so interesting because PCOS for most women is a symptom based syndrome. So it's like, do my symptoms of PCOS come back with weight gain? Yeah, they do. It affects my cycle, it affects my hormones, definitely weight gain in the belly area, all those things. Does that go away with weight loss and fueling myself with appropriate whole food nutrition? Yep. So I think that that's a really interesting thing to pay attention to is, like I had with college, right? So it's like I would always divert back to low carb, but it's like we all know it's like, how did people gain their weight? I dieted my way up another 50 pounds. It's not like I just stopped caring for a year. Every Monday I would care again. I was going to the gym, I was doing all the things, and then I would drink alcohol and I would eat pizza and I would do all the normal things on the weekends or Thursday through, right? My weekends were a little
Yeah.
longer in college. And so yeah, I gained all the weight back. Guess what? Lost it again. Doing what? Low carb. Right before my wedding. After my wedding, marriage bliss, maybe. Gained it, what, another 70
So now
pounds?
it's
I mean,
Jordan's fault.
George, it's like these people in my life, if they would just leave me alone.
I'd be skinny and thriving.
Skinny and happy. Kidding. Yeah. So yeah, I've gained it back 3 times,
And
you
that's
know,
common. I mean,
whatever you stop doing,
yeah.
like period. And people makes people feel so uncomfortable. And like that's the reality of it.
Yeah. So I think that's why they say you need to, however, whatever you like, however you lose weight is just how you need to stick to it. So you need to pick a way that's sustainable to
Yeah.
lose weight and have that be your lifestyle. And maybe, I don't know, maybe for some people that is throwing in a PSMF day every now and then.
It's
And
a
I feel like
tool.
that's, yeah, that's
It's a tool. It's
okay.
no different than fat fasts that people do. You could argue it's different in the body, obviously, right? So it's like, again, fat fasting is going to increase ketones. It could be incredible for hormone health. Maybe that's really helpful the week before your cycle with progesterone, or like whatever. Some people do carbs for that, right? So it's just a tool in the toolkit. That's why, people don't need to be so up in arms. Don't do it if you don't want to, if it doesn't work for you. But like, I like to be curious about these things. I've done a lightweight fat fast. I used to have clients that loved fat fasting, and I was all for it. I was like, do it. I always did protein sparing modified fast for me personally. It's just what my body likes. I like to lift weights, I'm active, and I carry a lot of muscle mass when I'm intentional about it. So the higher protein for me has always made sense. It made me feel really good. But then, yeah, my body would crave fat. So it kind of made it fun. Like I would look forward to like a really fatty, clean meal. And doing those, playing with those tools is what they are. Throw a 24-hour fast in. That's another thing Primal Bod does, by the way. She's big about like sardine fasting, and I think like weekly she talks about that in her reels, like 24-hour fast, I think on like Sundays or something like,
Yeah.
or whenever they do it.
I agree with that too. And I actually dabbled in that a while back and then fell off of it, but because it's hard
Hmm.
for me, I like to eat.
Yeah.
So it's hard to have
With a
breakfast and
family.
skip. What?
Mhm. With a family too.
Yeah,
Like,
if I didn't have
oh,
to like, if I could eat my breakfast and then not come back to it till breakfast the next day, easy. But I have to make three other meals, 87 snacks. So it's like a mental thing. And that's a me issue. I should be able to be a little bit stronger, but that's where I
can I
struggle.
plug one thing about that real fast?
Yeah.
Okay. The thing about like the circadian rhythm, I was so into that. And I was so like, this makes sense. We're supposed to eat within the sun. We're supposed to get the sunlight. We're supposed to have the protein and the fat in the morning. And then we're supposed to stop eating at 4, like good people, or maybe 2. And I think that that makes sense. I really do. When you look at the research and understanding red light and sunrise, sunset, and all of those things. But here's the deal for me personally, my husband and I eat dinner together every night. That's what we do. That's the only time we see each other. We start our days at different times. He's out and about all day. I'm at work. Come home, we have different routines. And that is our time that we connect. And a lot of people would be like, well, you don't have to eat. That's true. And I've done that before, but you know what? It's like kind of painful. Like having like and also that's when I cook for him, which, oh my gosh, could you imagine cooking for your family, Courtney? What a oppressive thing to do. And I love doing those types of things. And so for me, I kind of beat myself up for a period of time of like not trying harder to do that, or not trying to like switch our like lifestyle around a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? That's okay. That is what works for us. And so I stopped beating myself up about it. I went back to doing my traditional intermittent fasting that has always seemed to serve me. And that's how I do things. And I do think there is something to be said about the stress of trying to be this like perfect thing with your circadian health and your sleep and the blue block. And like, I think all of it's valid. I really do. And if you have major problems and issues, like you should probably like look into that. But I do also think that there is something about having dinner as a family and sitting at the table, and or with your spouse, like, we don't have kids right now. And so I think that that's also really spiritually therapeutic, to be honest.
Yeah, I
I just want to
agree.
say
And
that.
yeah, I mean, we've talked about this too. Like, I tried switching to having breakfast and it's hard. It opens up the floodgates for me to eat and then I battle
Right.
it all day. So if I can push it off, which yes, might not be ideal for my leptin, but what's better in the long run? Is it better to like eat breakfast and then gain weight because I can't stop myself, or maybe manage my weight a little bit, which affects my health by pushing that up? So I don't know. I feel like it's
Yeah,
all a balance. And like, yeah, like you said, stressing about things obviously isn't going to be helpful either. Real
yeah.
quick, I remember I was saying something about bodybuilders. I feel like
Mm.
bodybuilders are probably doing PSMF essentially like a week or two
It,
before their thing to
it
cut.
like is a bodybuilding like thing. Yes. Like I don't know exactly like where it was derived. Like I know I have Maria's book, but I obviously didn't hear about it from her. I heard about it through the Cleveland Clinic. But when you look up, yes, this is a massively common thing in the
From the
bodybuilding.
70s it was created. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
everyone, since Maria promotes it and has cookbooks on it, like think that she created this and they
No.
think this is her thing, and
Oh
it's
my
not.
gosh,
It's
no.
been around for a long time.
Forever.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm thinking too, like, oh, I've been in a 2-year bulking essentially and now it's just time to cut, and that's
Time for
okay.
competition.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me go step on a stage for you guys. So, yeah, I think it gets a bad rap. And from me too, I used to like judge it like, oh my gosh,
Sure.
how you can't cut your fat like that. But it's like, to me, it's almost no difference than not having any. At least I'm having protein. So it makes sense
Yeah.
to me. I'm just already not really looking forward to any negative comments about it. Like,
Oh,
because it's
I
just,
am.
like, let's just take what we want, leave what we don't, try things out, have an open mind, don't judge people. And
I
yeah,
hate
but
a lot of the people that make comments, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like it's a lot of people that are also stuck and they have questions and things are not working for them. It's like I said, the people that are most inspiring to me that I like to learn from are the ones that are curious, the ones that ask questions, the ones that are like, oh my gosh, it's fascinating. I love learning as much as I possibly can about health and wellness. You know this. I'm like obsessed with all the things. That doesn't mean I apply it all to myself. That just means I like the knowledge. I like to be like, wow, that's crazy. That's fascinating that that works so well for you. And, and then also if something's not working for me, yeah, I'll apply a couple things and see. It's just about knowing, I call it your health toolkit. And I have a whole note section in my phone, as you know, like running of like everything, meal formulas, fasting schedules. And yes, it's changed over time. But guess what's really interesting? Now that I'm trying to get off gain that I've put back on, I'm reverting back to old things that worked for me in the beginning that are still working for me now, even with 8 years of age on me.
yeah,
So that's
okay.
interesting.
No, that is interesting. And yeah, I think it's just about playing around with things. I have Hazel yelling for me right now. We were supposed to make this way
Y'all need to
shorter
eat.
than it is.
Uh-huh.
I'm hungry. So I would just like to say, if anyone's watching on YouTube, put in the comments like your experience with PSMF, if you've done it, how you felt. Like, let's just talk about this respectfully. Let's not
Yeah.
shame other people or body shame anybody. And yeah, oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, she's yelling. I gotta go. Thank you so much for being here again. I love you.
Oh, I love you too.
Like, comment, subscribe, all the things. All right, bye.
Bye, friend.
How do I end this thing?